Because
Yes.
9 times out of 10, when you mention change management to people, what do they say? Oh, okay, you guys are going to come in and do some training and you're going to do some communications.
Communication. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Exactly.
Which is
also, yes,
important. Yeah.
which is important. And yes, those are things we do. But to me, those are subsets of what we do. Because before I can even get to what a good communication strategy or plan should look like, before we can even get to what a good training plan or strategy should look like, guess what? I need to understand, who are my stakeholders? How are they impacted? To what degree are they impacted? Are they all centralized? Are they dispersed? Because that brings up the level of complexity that much more. What's their pain points? What's keeping them up at night? What's bothering them? Those are the things that we take from a change management perspective, wrap our hands around, and then that's the things that we put strategies around. Because, at the end of the day, I think people confuse what our jobs are, because we're not there to make sure that the project is done on time, within scope, and within budget. That's what we have a whole project management team for.
That's right.
Our job is to come and stand next to that project manager and say, hey, I understand you need to get this done on scope, within scope, and on budget and on time. But guess what? We are impacting people who have fingers on the keyboard, who we are fundamentally changing the way that they will work.
Hi there, and welcome to the HR Podcast. This is Linda Misegadis
and Cyndi Manuel, and we'll be your co-hosts. After spending years working in and with HR, we thought, why not start a podcast to support the important HR community? We believe the way things have always been done isn't necessarily what's going to work in the future. So we're diving into topics that support HR and working women as they navigate the future of work. We're talking about professional growth and also how we can support each other as human beings.
We can't wait to bring you insights from HR experts, thought leaders, and inspiring women who are making a real difference in their organization and communities. They'll share their journeys and tips on balancing work and life in a better way. We're excited to learn alongside you and hope you'll pick up some great takeaways, from tips and tricks to worksheets that you can actually use in your daily life. So grab your favorite beverage
or lace up your walking shoes and join us for the HR Her Resources podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Her Resources podcast. I'm here with my friend, co-host, and just all around amazing person, Cyndi Manuel.
I feel the same way about you, Linda.
Yeah, how are you doing?
Doing good. Doing
Yeah?
good. The weather has gotten nicer. We've been able to get outside more frequently.
I know,
here in
it's nice,
Colorado.
right?
Yeah.
It's that false thing though, right? It's the kind of convincing us that it's warm weather before
winter's over.
Yeah,
Dumps
exactly.
3 feet of snow on us, like it did back in 2003 when my child was conceived.
Exactly. No,
Not to be
so
really
true.
real, but
No, that's it.
I mean,
but it is nice. I don't know. For me, like, I always just feel fresher and brighter and everything when it just warms up. Like, I like the cooler weather. I'm not a hot weather person, but I get over the cold pretty quick. So
yeah. After the holidays, I have no use for the cold weather.
Nope. Yep. It's all good up until that. I'm with you for sure. Well, we are so excited to have in our studio today Pam Fleming, who I'm going to have you introduce, Cyndi. But before we jump in, we're going to be talking about change management, one of Cyndi's most favorite conversations. But I wanted to start off with just a couple of statistics. So around like change initiative success rates, studies indicate that approximately 70% of change initiatives within organizations fail to achieve their intended goals, often due to resistance and inadequate support. It always just amazes me when we read these statistics, because you think they would change and they don't, and it means we are not changing. Employee resistance, around 62% of employees feel negatively about organizational changes, citing a lack of communication and involvement as primary reasons. And then leadership engagement. Organizations with actively engaged leaderships are 2.5 times more likely to successfully implement change initiatives compared to those with less involved leaders. Change is hard. And I think, that's why I'm looking forward to really kind of digging into this, and especially with such an incredible guest on our show today. So without further ado, Cyndi, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Awesome. Well, I am very, very excited and honored to get to introduce Pam. Pam Fleming and I met through a mutual friend, just found ourselves to be kindred spirits about change management, leadership, being a woman-owned business. The more we talked, the more we were like, oh, wow, like we just really aligned very, very well. So I'm really happy to get to welcome you, Pam, as a guest today. Pam is the president and CEO of Nexus Transformation Partners. I love that name, by the way. It's a boutique change management consulting firm with 20 years of experience in executing change within large multinational organizations. Pam has traveled globally to speak about the foundations of transitioning through change and delivering various change management projects. Pamela has extensive experience in healthcare, oil and gas, and manufacturing. Her hands-on approach and dedication to getting the job done have been key to her success in helping people navigate through change. Pam holds a bachelor's degree in information systems and 2 masters in organizational development and public administration, all from Louisiana State University. And she is also
Go
a
Tigers.
U.S.
Go Tigers. Yes.
She's also a U.S. Army veteran. Thank you for your
Yes,
service.
thank you for your
And
service.
resides in Houston, Texas. So, Pam, welcome to the Her Resources podcast.
Thank you, guys. I am so honored to be here. So thank you.
Absolutely.
No,
I
no,
want to
that's
dive right in because there's so much that we want to talk to you about. So you recently wrote, well, maybe not recently wrote, but you recently put out into the world a wonderful book called Chaos to Change. And I was reading through it the other day, and on page 6, you described change management as a mission born of pain. And you shared the story of your journey into change management, which I found so inspiring. It brought tears to my eyes, and I just wanted to reach through the book and give you a hug, and just would love for you to share more about that story with our community.
Yes, most definitely. So change management for me is really born out of the pain that I endured. Because as a kid, playing on the playground, you close your eyes and you imagine the machine just turning around, the merry-go-round, and kids playing and laughing. And then all of a sudden, someone blurts out, well, that's why your mom is not your mom. You're adopted. That's how I found out that I was adopted at the age of 10 years old.
Wow.
And so, I had gone to my mom to ask, was it true? And she kind of really dismissed it. And, I carried that pain, that burden, that shame because, the kids were all laughing and, it was embarrassing to me. It was painful. And from that point, my mother and I, we never really had the greatest relationship. But this is where you start to evolve and you get older and you ask, well, why me? Why would you adopt me if, this is how we were going to end up? And I carried that for the better part of, I kid you not, maybe 12 years. It took me when I was into the military to finally just kind of resolve and say, you know what? Let me internalize this pain that I'm feeling. And let me figure out how do I resonate with this pain and move on? Because if not, it's going to literally destroy me because it was just eating at me. It was just eating at the soul of me. And so, I just made the conscious decision to hit it on, head forward, and I got through it. But what I realized is in that moment, my love for change became more than you could ever think. And I didn't even know what change management was at that time because I was in the military. And so what I decided is I know that I never wanted anyone else to feel the kind of pain that I had when going through a change. So that's why change management became my mission. It became my goal. And even more so when I got out of the military and I saw how, all of these organizations were going through all of these different changes, be it an implementation for a system, be it a reorg, be it a merger and acquisition. They never really took the time to think about how the people were impacted. It was all about the dollars. It was all about the cents. It was all about, even if you think about the return to office mandates, it's all about, making sure we're not leaving the buildings empty that we're paying for. It's not necessarily thinking about what's best for those who are impacted by the change. So that was my driver for ensuring that I was going to do everything reasonably within my power to make sure that organizations understood that when we are transitioning or transforming, take people into account, because at the end of the day, I always say this, the way someone transitions through change is as important, if not more so, than the change itself.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
Amen.
no, yeah, that's really impactful. It's
Yeah.
kind of interesting, how we end up where we end up, especially thinking about, it's not like you were a little girl dreaming about being leader in change management. It's
Yes.
something that impacts your life in a way that makes you kind of think that way. And I think that's indicative of most of our really good change agents. Like there are people out there who have made a career out of being change management. But what I've always kind of thought about some of those is that it is exactly all the things you were talking about, though. It's the prescriptive, tactical components of change that
Right.
are important, but that aren't what's going to make the change successful. And I know, Cyndi,
Exactly.
you went through that at becoming a change agent at the city and county of Denver. It really had very little to do with the change. It was the impact of the change and what it was going to
Mm.
do to the employees and to the city, and how people were going to feel there. So,
Yeah, I would agree. And Pam, thank you for sharing your story. And I
absolutely.
think, it's that's why change management is such a passion project for you. And as Linda said, when Linda and I were at the city and county of Denver is where I started my change management career back in 2007. And the more I got to support people and the more I saw a really good leader, we had an amazing leader at the time, Beth Mishan, who is the city controller, who Linda and I, the three of us were sort of joined at the hip and walking around and talking to people. And I started to see just how much the caring, it's less transactional and more relationship focused and more
Yes.
supportive. And that's what that's what you were just describing, Pam. And I'm so glad that you got into the role that you are in, because I can see all the things that you do to support the change management community. You're also a really strong leader. And so I just, are there any pivotal moments in your journey to becoming a leader as well?
So I would think the biggest pivotal moment for me was the time that I served in the military.
Mm.
Because for me, coming from where I was, I didn't grow up with everything that I wanted. I didn't grow up wealthy. I didn't grow up with all the means. And then going to the military and still carrying that shame that I had, that guilt that I had about, the embarrassment that I had about finding out I was adopted. And the reality is, it wasn't finding out that I was adopted was the issue. It was how I found out. That's
Yes.
what sent that transitory process into effect. And it was just a self-destructing thing. And so as going through that and then coming out of the military and going into the workforce and then working in consulting and going to these big organizations, I really saw how these big organizations, they came into these organizations to help, but their goal wasn't really to help. It was really about how many people can I get on site to be billable? You know,
Yeah.
I worked at a large firm, and it was really about bringing on a massive team of change people to solve a problem that we really didn't even know what problem we were solving. And that's when I made the conscious decision also as a leader, is that's not what I want to do as a person, as a leader, because I believe in transparency. I think that there's a lot of truth in transparency. And so that's one of the things that propelled me to start my own business, because I feel like when organizations are paying you, I believe they deserve that white glove treatment that they're paying for. And for you to
Yes.
also be able to peel back the layer of that onion for them and go deep and go wide, not just surface level and, bring a whole bunch of people. Understand the problem you're trying to resolve before you resolve it, because
Yeah.
otherwise we'll just be coming back again to do it. And so that pivotal moment of seeing how we treated clients. And the funny thing about it is, I was on both sides of the fence, because I was a consultant at one point, and then at another point, I went into industry. So I was on the other side of the table, and I had consultants working for me. And that's when I realized, you know what? I don't want this. I want something different. I want something better. And so that's why I made the conscious decision to do what I'm doing today.
I love
You know,
that.
Cyndi, what I love about what you were just saying there as well, Pam, is I think back when I tell people the journey that we went through at the city and county of Denver, they're like, how come you guys were so successful? And I tell them the things that you were just kind of focusing in
Yes.
there, Pam, about going deep and wide and relationship. Like we
Yes.
spent so much time really getting to what was the core issue. And so we could solve to the core issue,
Yes.
but also understanding how it was going to impact when you tell them that, they're like, "Oh, that's amazing." But most people don't wanna do the level of effort and work that it takes to do real transformational change. I'm curious your
Right.
thoughts on that, Pam.
Lisa, I swear you've just opened a treasure trove because I say that all the time. People truly don't understand the depth of work it takes to do change management correctly. Because
Yes.
9 times out of 10, when you mention change management to people, what do they say? Oh, okay, you guys are going to come in and do some training and you're going to do some
Yeah.
communications.
Communication.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, yep,
And
Which is
although,
exactly.
yes,
important. Yeah.
which is important. And yes, those are things we do. But to me, those are subsets of what we do. Because before I can even get to what a good communication strategy or plan should look like, before we can even get to what a good training plan or strategy should look like, guess what? I need to understand who are my stakeholders? How are they impacted? To what degree are they impacted? Are they all centralized? Are they dispersed? Because that brings up the level of complexity that much more. What's their pain points? What's keeping them up at night? What's bothering them? Those are the things that we take from a change management perspective, wrap our hands around, and then that's the things that we put strategies around. Because, at the end of the day, I think people confuse what our jobs are because we're not there to make sure that the project is done on time, within scope, and within
Mhm.
budget. That's what we have a
Yeah.
whole project management team for.
That's right.
Our job is to come and stand next to that project manager and say, hey, I understand you need to get this done on scope, within scope, and on budget and on time. But guess what? We are impacting people who have
Yes.
fingers on the keyboard, who we are fundamentally changing the way that they will work.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we have to
Yeah.
be cognizant of that. We have to be aware of that. Our strategists need to make sure that we are making people aware of not only what's happening, but why it's happening. Because you guys know, people don't care about the what. It's the
Mm-mm.
why. Why
Yeah.
are
And the
we
what's
doing
in it
this?
for me
And the
and
what's in it for me, or
yes.
how am I impacted? How will my
Yes.
day-to-day job change based on what you're doing? I can care less that you're implementing success factors. Okay, you're going to do that anyway. But I want to know, how are you going to help me as an
Yeah.
individual?
Right.
Or how
This
will
is
I
gonna
be
rock
impacted?
my world. Yeah.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And people appreciate when you go out and Linda, you talked about transparency. That
Mhm.
is, and you've always been a really great transparent leader. That is huge. And you had mentioned a statistic 2 times more successful when you have good leadership on projects, which Pam and I were both nodding around that as well. I was doing a training yesterday with a leadership team, and I told them, I said, you are the number one indicator of success
Right.
on the changes that your teams are going to go through. And the first thing is you need to, and this is it sounds so trivial, but put on your oxygen mask first.
You're
Take
right.
care of yourself. Make
Yes.
sure you're good. Pam, back to what you were saying. What is the change? Why are we making this change?
Mhm.
What does it mean for me as a leader, which is
Uh-huh.
probably likely different than
Yeah.
what it's going to, what are the WIFMs, what's in it for me
Yes.
as somebody
Mhm.
on the front lines who's doing the day-to-day work.
Yep.
It's going to be different and really being able to represent that and support people
Yep.
through
Exactly.
that
Totally
change.
agree. I'm
Yes.
curious from both of your perspectives because you're both leaders in this industry is why do you think it hasn't changed though? Because like we have been trying to, make this point and really kind of hammer home how critical this is. Why do you think that we still struggle to have the exact same conversations and we're not seeing a movement towards an understanding of what real change management means and the criticality of it, right? Because what are the first things that get cut out of any project are change management and training are the two things which are the two key things you're going to need to be successful. But those are the things that they cut out. Why do you guys think that we struggle so much to get that message and to actually see the change that we're looking for as well?
Pam, I'd like
Well,
to invite you to go first. Yeah.
yes, thank you. Most definitely. I will start with challenging one of the statistics that you brought up earlier, and the statistic of 70% of change initiatives fail.
Mhm.
I think that's why we are not able to move forward as a change practice, because that statistic in and of itself is inaccurate. Because
Mm.
think about it, if 70% of changes fail, how would any business still be in business?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the
That's
second
fair.
thing is, I think a
Great
lot of
point.
companies, this was brought up by McKinsey way back when, and, a lot of companies still use this as a tactic to kind of scare organizations into saying, oh,
Mhm.
I need to bring someone in. But the reality is, we scare organizations, we come in and then we don't meet the mark, and then everybody's disappointed with what we're giving them. And so we
Yeah.
can't be successful because we didn't come into the organization predicated on the right thing.
Mm.
I think when you go into change management, whatever the organization is, whatever the change is, having a deep discovery conversation to really
Mhm.
understand what's the pain point, what's the problem, who's impacted, peeling back that layer of the onion like I talked about earlier, that's when we find where the real issues are and what's keeping leaders up at night. Because the other thing too is, I don't talk to just leaders. Anytime I do stakeholder engagement, stakeholder interviews, I always ensure that I'm talking to senior leaders, I'm talking to mid-level leaders, and I'm talking to frontline
Huge.
leaders, because I can guarantee you what we hear from the top versus what we hear on the bottom is going to be in two different diasporas. Because, sometimes leaders, we sit here in what we call the ivory tower, and we're very disconnected at times from what happens day to day. Those people who have fingers on the keyboard, boots on the ground, doing the
Yeah.
actual work, they are the ones who can tell us what works and what doesn't work. We think from a theoretical, and when I say we, I'm not necessarily talking us. I mean, from a leadership perspective, we think from a theoretical perspective, well, this should work because of this statistic, where the reality is we haven't done our homework. We haven't come into your organization to really understand the uniqueness of your organization. And every organization's change plan should be as unique as they are.
Yeah, I would echo that too, Pam. And I think, just to expand on that, I have actually started to see a bit of a shift, which I'm really encouraged by.
Okay.
Years ago, and I know today everything is measured pre and post pandemic, but
Yes.
pre-pandemic, honestly, it was, very rare for me to go into an organization who had folks dedicated to change management,
Yeah.
who
Good
Yes.
had
point.
a center of
Mhm.
excellence, or even just a few people in their PMO who were focused on change management, on the people side of the change and the culture and things of that nature. Nowadays, I'm encouraged. I'm seeing more of a trend towards people wanting to at least have a level of knowledge about
Mhm.
change management, who are, dedicated to training their leaders, who are dedicated to training anybody who's interested in being a champion across an
Yes.
organization on change. So I think we're heading slowly in the
Yeah.
right direction. My favorite kind of a project or client is when they do have knowledge and internal resources that I get to go into. And
Mhm.
Pam, back to what you were saying, kind of how do you approach change? I want to meet you where you are and not say, oh, here's how
Yes.
you should, or here's all these spreadsheets, let's check a box
Yes.
and you fill these out. We're good to go. But to
Mhm.
really collaborate with them. And Linda, to your question earlier, I think it's up to us as change management professionals to continue to educate clients and do
Yes.
things like writing books like Pam has done to be able
Uh-huh.
to share the importance of change management. I'll
Oh,
get
Now,
off
that's
my
great
Cyndi, I,
answer.
soapbox.
I just want to kind of piggyback on that, because I absolutely agree. And I love the fact that we are seeing more companies wanting to start COEs. Before I decided to took another stint back in the corporate world, and I worked for a major hospital system where, I went in to start their change management office. The good thing about it is companies are thinking about it. The
That
bad
is
news
good.
about it is sometimes they don't think far enough about it to say, how do I continue to support this office once
Mm.
it's in?
Yes.
Because it's
Good
not
point.
just about putting an office in place, it's about how do you sustain and support it.
Yeah.
And so and one of the ways to do that, a very good way to do that, is to make sure that when you're thinking about a COE, because a COE is not a change management office, it can't take on full, scope of projects. Think about educating some people in the business, making them agents of change so that they can be able to participate in changes. Maybe it's a small change in their area. Make sure that, they know how to use a tool or a template, maybe not to the degree that we as change practitioners do, but make sure that they understand how to use these tools so that they can take the pressure off of the COE and off of the organization. And the more we embed change within the organization, the better off that organization will be, and they will see massive return on investment for that.
I love that. I think those are great answers from both of you. And it is inspiring to hear you say that you're starting to see a shift. And I also like what you just said there too, Pam. It's not enough to create an office. We saw that happen with chief innovation officers, right? That was a big thing for a little while. And we see like a big surge. And to your point, it's not creating an office that gets the work done. It's all of the other pieces and the structure and the execution and the support that's going to come afterwards. Exactly. Yeah. But it's something that needs to be refined over time. So,
absolutely.
But Cyndi, you were going to transition to Pam's book. I'm curious, like, why that title? Like, tell us why chaos to change?
Good question.
Well, it's actually chaos to clarity, managing change and transition.
Sorry.
Oh, no, absolutely no worries. And really, that title came from the fact that when I go into these organizations, there's massive chaos. So we go in there, the project is running full speed, the train's about to derail. Now what do? You bring change management in at the 11th hour, and then
Clean
you expect
up on
us to be... Yes, you expect us to be, the doers and the fixers of everything. And so I want to move companies from that chaotic state to moments of clarity. Bring in change management when you know that it makes sense. So this book for me was really a labor of love, and it started way back from when I was a kid, and it transferred into my military time and then, into my current situation. And so I would like for folks to stop operating in a chaotic environment and start thinking rationally and start rethinking, what do I need and how do I need it and when do I need it and how best to serve the projects and the people that are impacted.
I love that. No, that's really that's really helpful. And I'm curious, from your time in the military and then coming out, like the military is a much different environment. I'm curious though, thinking about like the dynamics of change in the military, because I mean, it's very structured, regimented for a reason. Lives are on the line. I mean, there's a reason why the military is the way that it is. I'm kind of curious, like, did you get inspired through that? Was there something you saw there as well that kind of helped you carry that forward into what you're doing today?
Good question.
Yes, I think a lot of people see the military as command and control, and to a sense it is. But it also teaches you lots of great lessons. It teaches you how to lead. It teaches you how to be a leader. And, think about it. Coming into the military at 17, 18, learning these leadership skills you won't learn by going straight into college. You'll learn stuff out of a book, but these are actually, skills
Real
that
life.
real life things. And you talk about no man left behind in the military. We take that very seriously, and I take that very seriously in everything I do from a change perspective. That's why I talk about how transitioning through change is just as important as the change itself. And, for me, one of the things they used to say in the military is the effective range of an excuse is 0 meters.
Yeah.
And so, I try to instill that in people. There are no excuses because, we see people with multiple disabilities that's knocking it out the park. I was like, there's no excuse for a fully able-bodied person to have an excuse for not to be able to do anything.
0.
Now, I'm not saying I can go be a brain surgeon tomorrow because no, that's not the case. But, the reality is we don't think from a positive growth mindset. Sometimes our own thoughts are self-limiting. And that's one of the things that the military really helps you with, understanding that there are no self-limiting thoughts here. Think about what you can do and go out and do it. And guess what? If you fail, pick yourself up by the bootstraps, move on, course correct, and try again. And that's how I've lived my entire life since being in the military. And the funny thing about it is people typically don't know that I've been in the military. And when I mention that I've been in the military, they're like, that explains it. I was like, that explains what?
Ah,
That is so funny. It is a different mindset though, right? I mean, it does. It brings something different to the conversation. So
I
Yes.
do
I
see the
love that.
correlations, though. I
Yeah.
love how you've described that, because there are like the no man left behind. I hadn't really thought about that before, but that is at the
Yeah.
core of change management, good change management,
Yes,
right? No
exactly.
Yeah.
man
It
left
is.
Yeah.
behind. Like, let's take care of people. We're not saving lives, but we are impacting lives. And so, no man left behind is a really great way to think about that. At the Delta Principle, we are transforming the way you experience change. Have you ever experienced an organizational change where your employees pushed back because it was too much, too fast, or they just didn't understand why they couldn't do things the way they've always done them? What about where communication was non-existent or unorganized, with important updates getting lost in the shuffle, leaving people confused? And have you ever experienced change where morale was at an all-time low because the change felt overwhelming and not aligned with your organization's culture? If you are being asked to lead an important organizational change, especially if you're new to leading change, or if you're just feeling overwhelmed, the Delta Principle is here to support you. We work closely with you as a trusted partner, co-creating real-world solutions to address your unique challenges, and we equip you and your organization for future success. Are you gearing up for your next transformation journey or exploring ways to strengthen your change management skills? Then let's connect. This year, we're thrilled to introduce Leading Change, a training designed for leaders driving organizational initiatives, and Navigating Change, a training tailored to empower teams and adapting to change with confidence. Our coaching and training sessions are fully customizable to meet your organization's unique needs. Reach out today to see how we can partner with you to make your next change a success. You can find us on LinkedIn or by emailing us at info@thedeltaprinciple.com.
So,
Yeah.
Pam, how would you like users to use your book? Like, what do you hope that people take away from that, and how can they apply that to what they're doing?
So throughout the book, what I've done is I've had some questions in there that I've indicated with the light bulb. And these are questions that they are to ponder for themselves. And at the back of the book, there's space for them to go and, journal what their
I love
answer
that.
to those
Yeah.
questions are. Because I think a lot of times people just read books to read books. And
Mhm.
for me, this is going to be an intentional, thought-provoking book because I want you to place yourself in that position. This book is really written from a storytelling perspective, and I feel like when you write from a storytelling perspective, it really resonates with people more than just
Totally
theory.
agree.
I've
Yeah.
kind of steered away from the whole theoretical book thing, and I,
Mhm.
I wanted this to be a personal investment of where I've been. My
Yeah.
story is a real story, and until late last year, the words you've heard me say today about how I transitioned and how I found out I was adopted, those words had never come out of my mouth before, ever,
Wow.
Wow. Wow.
until I decided to write this book. And
Wow.
because of that, remember earlier I talked about truth is in transparency, right? I
Yeah.
believe in
Mhm.
being very transparent. There's nothing that I hide, because there's no need for me to do it. If I'm going to say I'm coming to you to help you, I need to be transparent about my own journey.
That's
And
so
Yeah.
maybe my own
true.
journey can help, somebody see in themselves what happened with me, and they can start to resonate with it because, we all deal with different things, and a lot of us deal
Yeah.
with it under the covers and no one ever knows. And so,
Sure.
bringing my story to the public is hopefully a way to help someone else.
I
It
love
you
that.
know, it made me think too as I was reading through it. First of all, it touched my heart because I just thought the one person that you would go to support you through such a big discovery is your
Mhm.
mom. And so as a mom, I just thought, gosh, and I don't know the whole situation, but I just feel like that was an opportunity for her to have, kind of wrapped her arms around you and said, we're going to go on this journey together, which I think is something good leaders do too. But the other thing that I thought about is maybe your trajectory wouldn't have been the same had
That's right.
the
Mhm.
Exactly.
experience been different.
Yeah.
And so, I was so grateful that you were willing to share that. And I think you're right, Pam and Linda and I talk about this a lot with this podcast too, is if you can help one person with a decision or how they're feeling about something or helping them through something by, putting out a good podcast like the one that we're doing with you, putting out an awesome book like the one that you have put out into the world, Chaos to Clarity. And, then we have all done our job here.
Absolutely.
Exactly. I feel the exact same way because, one of the things that I do is I teach a non-practitioner training class. And that's really for leaders and organizations who, they're not practitioners. They don't need to know how to do stakeholder assessment, impact, and all that. But I teach them how to think about change during periods of change, because those are the pivotal moments where people really need to understand those things. And so that's part of the journey. Everybody's not going to be always the ones that are impacted by a specific change or incident that causes some deep internalization. But guess what? Everybody will be impacted by something at some point. And so one of the things out of that class, and, I think it's probably one of the bigger takeaways, is I always talk about the iceberg method. And I said, think about, what do you see versus what other people see? So basically, what do you see versus what people feel? So on the tip of the iceberg, you may see Pam showing up to work late. You may see Pam a little bit angry. You may see Pam frustrated. And all of a sudden, you're making inferences about, this is Pam's character. Oh, she's this way. Oh, she's that way. But you don't have any idea of hundreds of miles beneath the surface. What are those things that's really causing that to happen?
Right.
I could have angst. I can have anxiety. I can be not able to pay my bills. I can have stress. I can have frustration. I can have, think about this. This is the first time in history that we've had 5 generations in the workforce, right?
Yes, very true.
So think about when we implement a new system. Think about the baby boomers. What's driving their level of frustration, angst, and anxiety? It could be, well, what if I don't learn this new system? What's going to happen to me, and what's going to happen to my job? And so it's just, as a leader, making sure that before we start to make inferences about how someone's character is, think about that iceberg, because you're only seeing what's at the tip. You have no idea, what's going on with them from a personal perspective, a work perspective. I mean, there's just so much to consider. And honestly, that was one of the biggest takeaways that I still hear people talk to me today about, how now, when they go into different situations, they don't automatically start judging. They think about taking a step back and saying, well, you know what? Let me see if I can understand what's driving this person's behavior. Because sometimes it's not about being there to say anything or do anything. Sometimes it's just about sitting in silence
and listening and letting people have an opportunity to share their story or just vent, and sooner or later, something will come to the surface. And if you have been good about listening to them, you might find something out too that you had not thought about, going back to what you were saying before, Pam, about really doing your discovery. What is the change? Why are we making this change? How is it impacting all the different levels? And you may learn something from this person who is venting. And maybe it's a matter of just graciously helping that person find a new role in a new area of the organization, or allowing them to say, you know what, it's my time to go.
Exactly.
And being gracious.
Give grace.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
Absolutely.
So Pam, what made you decide to go out and launch Nexus Transformation Partners? Tell us a little bit about that, and why the name too. I'm curious about Nexus Transformation. That's a great name. So how'd you come up with that?
So in true reality, a month ago, I was change navigators.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It even says that on the book.
Yeah. I love that.
So when I wrote the book, I was still change navigators. Nexus Transformation Partners was born out of me sitting here in my office. I was on a call and something just struck me. I don't know what it is. I call it divine intervention. And I was like, I need to rebrand. Change navigators, even though I love it, it's not where I want to be, because I talk about change management and lots of people just don't get change management.
No.
So what I decided is, I want to talk about business transformation. I want to talk about
Yes.
how you truly transform a business. And I do it from 3 points. I think about it from a talent perspective. I think
Mhm.
about it, from a technology perspective, and also about how do you lead perspective. And when those three
Mm.
things come together, the nexus of those three things is really where true business transformation happens. And Nexus, actually, the name I wanted transformation somewhere in the name.
Yeah.
And so I started with transformation, and then I was like, well, what sounds good with transformation? And I was like, well, you know what? I keep talking about these three things. And
Uh-huh.
then Nexus, I was like, well, oh, okay. Nexus is just really the coming together of two or more things. And so I was like,
Mhm.
Nexus transformation. And I was like, well, I need to say something else. And then partners just kind of jumped out at me. I was like, because I want to be a partner to any
Yeah.
company or organization that I go into. So Nexus Transformation Partners is truly our organization coming together to be your partner to help you and your organization through true business transformation, not just through a change, not just through
Right.
incremental change, not just through transition, but through true transformation.
I
I
love that.
love that.
Yeah. And
I
you're so spot on that it's those 3 pieces. You need all
Yeah,
3 of those for real transformation
you
to occur. It's
do.
not like just one of those things. It's all of those things coming together. So I love that.
Yeah,
What a great name. What
good
a great way to come
visual.
up with that. Yeah.
I don't think Pam ever sleeps because Pam is always doing a lot of different things. So, Pam, how do you manage the demands of running a business, writing a book, all the different things that you're involved in? I know that you go and speak at different events and stuff like that too. So, how do you kind of manage doing that and having a personal life? I know you've got a husband,
Question.
and so
Yes.
yeah.
So in the beginning, it wasn't easy. It was like having 50 things going on at once. But what I've learned to do is compartmentalize. I
Mm,
time block now. If I'm setting time
yes.
to write my book, that time is strictly dedicated to writing the book. If I'm
Love
setting time to, do something for the business, then I'm strictly just doing that for the business. If I'm working with a client, I'm
Mm,
definitely working with that client. Now, one of the things is because I'm doing all of those things, I typically don't take full-time projects. I
Okay.
get the business and then I deploy people out to different businesses
Sure.
to execute on the change. But I maintain closeness there because I still need to make sure that their client is satisfied. So I do
Absolutely.
build in time for
Yeah.
me to have time with the client for client satisfaction and all those things. But I compartmentalize. I make sure that all things are being taken care of. Some of them are not equal to others, but and that may change week by week. Because if
mm,
I'm down to the wire on this book and I need to get it published, then maybe for the next week my head is down in the book.
Right.
But I never neglect my client duties as well. So it's just for me understanding how to start compartmentalizing. And the other big thing that I had to learn, and I have learned, the power of no is a full sentence.
yes.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
heard that and
Yeah.
I thought that is so good. Yes. No
Yes.
is
That
Yes,
is
a
good.
perfectly fine full sentence.
Yeah.
yes. No is a perfectly fine, good sentence. And having to say no to things that, not all money is good money to me,
Mm,
Yeah.
having to say
True.
no to things that don't help engage me in the things that I like to be in, you know, I've learned to say no to those things because guess what?
yeah.
If I continue to do great work, I will get the business and I will get the money.
Yeah.
So that's not the issue. So I'm not chasing money. I'm not chasing anything. I'm chasing true inner peace and satisfaction. And, being my own boss has been one of those things because now I get to choose,
Mm.
the clients that I work with. I get to
Yeah.
choose
Yeah.
who I want to do business with. I make that decision. I get to choose how I let someone treat me, so it's not like
Right.
I get to settle for anything. And that has been one of the most freeing things ever.
Oh,
And
I can only
Pam, how
imagine.
many years have you been doing your business?
Yeah.
It'll be 2 years in August.
Congratulations.
Yes,
Congratulations. That's
it'll be
Yeah,
2 years
that's
in
awesome.
August.
fantastic. No, I love
Very
that.
cool.
What kind of routines or habits do you have that kind of help you keep you grounded? Because I think that's something like I have to learn that no is a complete sentence for sure. And so I have not
Yeah.
mastered that one by any means. But what are some of the routines and habits that you kind of use in your life to kind of help you with that staying grounded?
So, here's the one thing that I do. So back when COVID hit, I purchased a Peloton.
Okay.
And so
That was like a
I was,
big, like that took off like crazy. We had all kinds of people with that Peloton craze. So,
My
yes,
daughter-in-law
yes,
did
yes.
that too. Yeah.
Yeah. And so to this day, so I purchased the bike, and that's what I was doing. And a couple of years after the bike, I purchased a tread. And what I do now is when I'm in stressful meetings, I intentionally block out time, middle of the day. I
yeah,
go and I work out,
good for
you know,
you.
That's so
Yeah.
because
smart.
what it does is it helps clears my mind and it
Mhm.
brings me back to a settled mindset where now I can start rethinking of the best thing to do. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes if I don't do the Peloton, I actually go outside and I take a walk around my
Yes.
neighborhood because just getting some fresh air sometimes
Yeah.
I even if I'm just listening to a conference call, I walk
Yeah.
outside while I'm listening. And those are the things that you kind of need to kind of refresh your soul, refresh your
Yeah.
mind. Because if you just sit mind numbing behind a computer all day,
Mhm.
that's not good. You're not going to get anywhere because you're just going to find yourself spinning your wheels because you're not going to know what you're doing, when you're doing it, what you're doing it for. And so that's why I time block and I make sure that I time block for those things that give me energy. And my Peloton is something, even though I hate it when I'm doing it,
Right?
when I
You
get
have a
off, I'm
love-hate
telling you,
relationship.
yes, when I get off
Yeah.
the energy, the high, it's so much
Yeah.
different and it allows me to come back refreshed and I build that into my everyday.
I
I love
love the
that. I
time
think that's
blocking.
the time block, I
Mm,
think is something that is so
so
important.
smart.
Yeah, I love that as a great takeaway for our listeners is really getting into the habit of leveraging that calendar and time blocking and putting that, and that when you're in
Mhm.
that moment, right? You're mindful about if you're working
Mhm.
with a client or if you're working on a project, it kinda does help clear the mind a little bit because we live in a constant, stimulation
Oh,
environment.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just data's coming at you from
You
so many
pick up your
different
mini
angles.
computer in your hand, right? And it's just
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it can be
constantly.
very distracting. So, no, I think that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
really great. I like that one
One
for
other
sure.
thing that I will just say, I started doing this and I find this, and I even recommend this to my clients, journaling. I
Mm,
find that journaling is so cathartic and I don't do it I don't type it out or anything. I actually
mhm.
write because I find the power of writing takes you somewhere that typing
Yeah,
never can.
yeah, I
It's so
And
agree.
true.
your thoughts just come out. And I feel like a weight is lifted when I'm journaling. My thoughts
Yeah,
are on paper and that's not anything that I do with it after the fact. It's just the
right.
fact that
Just to get
I
it
The
down.
get
free
it out.
flow.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you kinda
Mhm.
Exactly.
give yourself I'm not good at journaling, and I would really like to get better, and I've even gotten those journals that give you the prompts and stuff.
Mhm.
How do you, like, set a timer, or do you just, like, let it go and just do as much a how what is your practice with journaling? I'm just curious,
Sure,
and I'm sure
sure.
other people are too.
For journaling, I don't set a time because my thoughts are not time blocked. And
Mm.
Mhm.
so
That
I
makes sense.
journal until I feel like I put everything on paper for that point in time that I need to put on
Mhm.
paper. And that
Right.
makes me feel so much better. So I don't time block it because I feel like if you try to time block journaling, you're going to cut your thoughts off short and
Yeah.
you're not
Mm,
going to
yep.
really write or think what it is you really want to do. So I make sure that I just journal until I'm finished. That's the one thing that I don't put any time blocks around.
I like that. Yeah. No, that's really good. Well, what's kinda next for you from a personal and professional? Like, what are your next goals, as you're on this journey, especially on this transformation journey?
Yes, definitely. So right now I'm in the process of starting a mastermind. And so
Ah,
I'm calling it the vault.
I like
I love
that.
that.
And so with this mastermind, it's really for right now I have it for directors and above.
Uh-huh.
And what I want to do is bring a group of like-minded people together to meet once a week to talk about what's really the pain points you're feeling? What are some of the
Yeah.
things that you can do in your personal and professional life? Masterminding sometimes is about how do I solve a problem at work,
Mhm.
but sometimes mastermind groups can be how do I resolve this problem that's, I can't get around in my life.
Yeah.
So this is a trusted group of
Mm.
people and it's a 6-month program. And so I'm trying to get it kicked off. And what I've done is I've reached out to a few major companies because what I want
Huh?
to do is to say, I want to use them as they have people participating, not as sponsors or anything. And so I'm actually have gotten some traction, and one organization has reached out and said yes, they're willing to participate. And in
Yeah.
exchange for their participation, I'm offering their person a free 6-month complimentary seat in the
Oh, that's
um
awesome.
mastermind.
That's
If there
so
are any
cool.
organizations out there that are listening that are interested in connecting with you on that, how do they go about doing that, Pam?
So they can reach out to me at engage at ntp-global.com, or they can reach out and link with me on LinkedIn. Definitely, I'm out there, Pamela Fleming, Pamela R. Fleming, I believe it is.
It is. Yeah.
You will see me in the red suit on the on my picture. So
All your pictures are
that's me.
great, by the way. Did you have like a professional photographer come in and do a bunch of they're beautiful.
Actually, yes, that was part of my rebrand. I went and had my whole suite of pictures rebranded and everything. And
Oh, fun.
part of the rebrand was the pictures. It was the Nexus Transformation Partners. And this is where my whole mastermind came about, because I was like,
Yeah.
Love
you
that.
know what? As leaders, I think part of the reason I wanted to do this mastermind, in all seriousness and transparency, is because I think sometimes leaders may not say it, but I think sometimes leaders feel forgotten as well,
I
Mhm.
because
totally agree
at
with
a
that.
leadership
Yeah.
Yes.
level, people treat them differently. They don't treat them like they're people. They treat them like they're inanimate objects, like they sit
Mhm.
on the pedestal. Oh, I can't approach this person. I can't talk to this
Yeah.
person. But
Yeah,
guess what? Leaders have feelings. They have issues. They have problems. And, they want to be
that's
heard
right.
and spoken to just like everyone else. And I think
Yeah.
that this mastermind will give them the opportunity to be amongst a similar group of people that can help resolve any of these issues. Because sometimes, and especially like for leaders, if you've been in a particular organization for 20, 30 years, maybe hearing some fresh perspective of how other organizations do it might
Right.
just be the one thing that you need to get you unstuck. So
Yes.
it's really about community. It's really about, you know, bringing in thought leadership. It's really about making sure that as a group of people, we hold each other's confidentiality, but we help each other as a group of leaders. So,
Yeah. I would imagine there'll be some kind of common themes and things like that as well that can
yes.
kind of support you then to be able to put back into, some of the programs and some of the services that you offer, Pam. So,
Yes, yes.
yeah.
Now, one of the things that I'm planning on doing is I plan to kick the vote off in June, late June.
Okay.
So late Q2, I think it is. But what I plan to do is I'm going to hold some free sessions at the end of March, and then maybe um, in April, and then in May. So for my Houston folks, I'm planning on renting a conference space at a building called the Ion. That's where the big technology things happen. Lots of organizations have big meetings there, but I'm
Cool.
also planning to host them virtually. And as a matter of fact, one of the things that I'm doing is I am building a workbook for those
Oh,
who
I love
are
it.
going to be part of the vote. And we're going to actually do some real work in the free
Yeah.
session, because I don't want this to just be a session where you come and sit and listen. I want you to actually understand the type of
Participate.
work we will do in the vault. So hopefully
That's
be on the
such
lookout
a
for that
great
announcement to
idea.
come soon.
That
Yeah. I
Peloton
love
is working
that.
for you, Pam. All the good
Yeah.
ideas.
Yeah. Oh, I got that brain power
Yeah.
going for sure. No, definitely.
Ah,
Where can listeners find your book, Pam?
So the book is currently on Amazon. And so they can go to Amazon and you can either put in my name, Pamela R. Fleming, or if you put chaos to clarity, um, a whole slew of things are going to come up. But if you
yeah.
put chaos to clarity, managing change and transition, it should pop up. But if you put my name, it should also pop up. So yes, it's available on Amazon and also on Amazon Kindle.
I love it. No, that's fantastic. And if people want to connect with you and learn more about Nexus Transformation, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yes. Again, they could connect with me on LinkedIn. They
Okay.
can go to my website and learn more about us, which is ntp-global.com, or they can send an email to engage@ntp-global.com.
Yeah, it has been so great having you
Yeah.
on.
Thank you
I
so
can't wait
much.
to watch and see all the amazing things that you're going to keep doing.
Thank
And
you.
we'd love for you to come back especially after you launch Vault. We'd love to hear about how it's going and maybe
Yeah,
what are
Definitely.
some of the
some of the
things that you're taking
themes.
away from it? Yeah, for sure. Because I love what you're doing with it. We're going through this training thing at work right now for directors and above. And a part of it is just kind of, it's called the all-in leader. And it's really kind of focused in Michael Bush, who's the CEO of a Great Place to Work. He really kind of is they're the genesis of this whole all-in leader. But the whole talk track around that, it's hard as a people leader sometimes for all the things that you were just
Yeah,
talking about. Is like, who do you vent to? Who do you talk to? Who do
right.
you share those
Exactly.
frustrations with? And sometimes it's really exhausting because you're trying to solve all these problems for people that you don't even necessarily know the answer to. You're just kind of making it up
Exactly.
as you go along. And so it's kind of nice to have a community to share that with and to really kind of get together. So it sounds very exciting. I'm glad you're doing this.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I
it's
truly
awesome.
appreciate it.
Thank you for your time, Pam. And I am just super excited to continue to support each other as, small business
Definitely.
owners. And
Gotta
Linda's
support
a
each other.
great person to, be a supportive person as well. So just really good to see you and spend time with
Yeah.
you. And thank you.
So
I'm sure
glad
our
I got the
community got
chance, and I
got a
know our
lot out of
listeners.
this.
Thank you
Yeah.
both for having me on. It has been my honor and my pleasure.
Well, thanks everyone for another amazing episode of the Her Resources podcast, and we'll see you back next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of the HR Her Resources podcast. We're so happy to have you with us on this journey. Music and production by Logan Misegadis of LJM Productions. We'd also like to thank our intern, Lauren Banas, for creating our logo and supporting our social media postings. If you'd like to connect with Logan or Lauren, you can find their information in the show notes. If you found value in our discussion and think someone else might as well, please follow, subscribe to our LinkedIn, and share with a friend. Until our next episode, please take care and continue to support one another.